Hello fellow sim racers. Today I'm taking a look at the new GT4 cars in RaceRoom. Sector 3 Studios has been producing some excellent content for RaceRoom of late, and alongside the new GT4 cars there are a whole host of other small updates that have been brought to the sim. So stick around to find out if the new GT4 cars are up to the same standard that we've come to expect from recent RaceRoom releases. GT4 may not have as much of a following as the various increasingly popular GT3 series have garnered of late, but it has a lot going for it for both sim racers and motorsport fans. Tight fields comprising a wide variety of cars and drivers, often in the Pro-Am format, makes for very close scrappy racing, which is very much the sort of thing that keeps me jumping into the sim rig. So, with the KTM Crossbow GT4 having been in development for what feels like an eternity, it was inevitable that we'd see a GT4 class come into RaceRoom sooner rather than later, and I have to say, it was worth the wait. Before we move on and talk about the cars individually, I want to talk about the pack as a whole for a moment, and specifically the car choices: the KTM Crossbow, the Porsche Cayman and the Lotus Evora. Sector 3 have evidently tried to bring together GT4 cars that don't have a GT3 equivalent, and that should be commended. In my opinion, it's the oddities like the Crossbow and the Camaro, for example, that give GT4 fields a lot of character. But the absence of the ever-present Audis, Mercedes, BMWs, Astons and McLarens that make up the bulk of GT4 fields does leave you with a bit of an odd selection. The Porsche Cayman is the most common of the cars, and this example is the latest version, which was launched last year, while the Lotus Evora is pretty old now, and it's a car you don't really see in GT4 fields very much, if at all anymore. In fact, as far as I can tell, its homologation expires in just over a month. And then there's the left field KTM Crossbow GT4, which is a fantastic car, but not one that makes up the bulk of GT4 fields. This may feel like a complaint, but it's not. I appreciate that new, different cars will drive more sales opportunities than a GT4 version of, say, the R8 or the 570S. I just hope that Sector 3 has plans to bring some of the more common cars to the class in future. First up is the ubiquitous Porsche Cayman Club Sport GT4, which you may be forgiven for thinking was already available in RaceRoom, and to some extent you'd be right. But this new version replicates the package produced by Manthey Racing, who know a thing or two about racing Porsches, having secured a 1-2 with the factory GTE cars at Le Mans and won the Nürburgring 24 Hours, and that's just this year. The new package has all of the usual development tricks, lightened parts to improve weight distribution, and an upgraded aero package. And crucially, this variant has adjustable brake bias, unlike the regular Club Sport model. All three cars in the pack are what I would describe as easy to drive but hard to master. And when you think about it, that makes sense. GT4 was developed to provide more racing opportunities to amateur drivers as GT3 became more professionalised, and to provide a stepping stone for younger drivers. So, all three cars are fairly forgiving, but when you drive them right at the limit, they're immense fun. The Porsche tends to oversteer a little into corners, which is very on-brand. This can be dialed out a little by moving the brake bias forward, but I quite enjoy the car being a little eager on turning. Similarly, in stock form, there's a small amount of power understeer present, but turning the factory traction control right down soon cured that. All in all, it's a very balanced, planted car that's good fun to throw through the fast stuff. Next up is the spaceship-esque KTM Crossbow GT4. I'm going to declare my biases right off the bat here. I've wanted this car in a racing sim for a few years now, and I have a lot of love for the real thing. I'm not sure why, maybe it's the outrageous styling or the antisocial noise it makes, but something about the Crossbow GT4 just feels right. So I had high expectations going in, and I'm pleased to say that I wasn't at all disappointed. The Crossbow drives just as tightly and aggressively as I imagined. Agile, it's precise, almost like a single-seater in some ways. And of the three cars, this is the one to have in all of the tight technical corners. The Crossbow was the car I bonded with quickest, probably taking less than a lap in total to get comfortable and start pushing the car hard. The brakes are particularly impressive on the Crossbow, and they almost dare you to dive bomb every time you get near another driver, which is a bit of a double-edged sword, I suppose. Maybe it suits my driving style, but this is a car that does what it's told, and crucially, lets you have a bit of fun while you're doing it. Finally, the trusty Lotus Evora GT4. Assetto Corsa fans will be familiar with this car in the form of the Evora GTC, which was developed from the GT4 variant. And the driving experience is broadly similar. The car's planted and responsive, but like the others in the pack, it moves around a bit more as you get close to the limit. The Evora's good on the brakes and feels very precise on turn-in, and to be honest, it's a very easy car to get along with. I can see the Evora being a lot of people's favourite car in the pack, at least to begin with. As far as driving experience goes, there's not a whole lot more to say. The Evora isn't quite as fun as the KTM, but it seems to be a very capable race car. As you would expect, all of the cars in the pack look the part, and the interiors are particularly impressive. The Porsche's refined by race car standards, the KTM is all carbon and cheap plastic, while the Lotus feels more like a purpose-built track car. That all being said, it's hard to get away from the fact that as time continues to progress, the game's visuals are looking more and more dated. But that's not really a commentary on these cars, which in my opinion match the standards of other recent offerings from Sector 3. You may have noticed that I've not really talked about sound yet, and that's because my feelings for all three cars are pretty similar. RaceRoom has consistently been the best sim when it comes to sound, and the GT4 pack does sound very good. But the caveat here is that, with the exception of the Crossbow, the real cars aren't really head-turners when it comes to engine note. And when it comes to onboard sounds, transmission whine is often the most prominent thing. And that's the case with all three of these cars. So, the sounds are realistic, if not exciting. And as you would expect, they hold up very well against real-world onboards. Something else that Sector 3 usually gets right is stock setups, which are more often than not very usable. And that's the case here with all three of these cars. Unlike in some other sims, I felt I could really lean on these cars right from the off, braking late, attacking curbs, and feeling good stability through the fast stuff. This is something that I really wish other developers would spend more time on. Another point of note is that the AI model has seen a big improvement for this build, and it's done a great job of making the racing even closer, something that complements these cars particularly well. However, those that dislike the RaceRoom AI due to its tendency to punt you mid-corner will find that this still hasn't been addressed. I'm a firm believer that R3E has the best AI of all the racing sims when it comes to close racing, and with the tweaks to how the cars attack and defend, that's only gotten better. But it's hard not to get frustrated when you're having one of those races where you're being hit corner after corner. And while I'm having a whinge, this build would have been the perfect time to introduce proper customizable grids in single player, to allow players to run multi-class races and choose specific liveries. There are plenty of series that run GT3 and GT4 alongside each other, so it's a shame that this can't yet be done in RaceRoom unless you go online. When I think of GT4, I think close racing, diverse fields, and lots of action. And in my opinion at least, this pack delivers all of those things. And combined with some of the tweaks in the latest build, I think there's a lot of fun to be had with this class of cars. In fact, if Sector 3 add a couple more GT4 cars over the next year, there's a strong possibility that GT4 could become one of the most popular categories in the game, because ultimately, close racing is what most of us want. So, that just about wraps things up for this first look at the new GT4 cars for RaceRoom. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, then it would be great if you could hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. And if you think the video will be helpful for others, then please consider sharing it. As always, thank you for donating your precious free time by watching. It is very much appreciated. So all that's left to say is goodbye, thank you for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.